You've been betrayed, haven't you? Not by a stranger on a plane, but by someone who promised to love you forever. I know that kind of shock, the kind that makes your world crumble. It's like discovering a secret written on a napkin. Only this secret isn't about saving your life. It's about realizing the life you built was a lie. My name is Elizabeth, and for 30 years, I believed I had a marriage rooted in trust and unconditional love. I was proud of the life my husband, Robert, and I had built. A beautiful home, 2 successful children, and the kind of quiet, steady companionship most people only dream of in their later years. I was the person who always believed in family, in forgiveness, and in enduring love. I thought I was ready for anything. A financial setback, a health scare, maybe even the heartbreak of an empty nest. But I wasn't ready for the truth to be scribbled on a tiny piece of paper hidden in the linen closet, a place I only visited once a year during my meticulous spring cleaning ritual. The moment I found that receipt, tucked away beneath the towels, my hands started to tremble. It wasn't a note from a panicked flight attendant, but a receipt for a piece of jewelry, a delicate, custom-made locket I had never seen before. The date on it was 2 weeks before our 30th wedding anniversary. That wasn't the shock. The shock came when I saw the name engraved inside. Isabella. We didn't know any Isabellas. That was the moment when the quiet, steady life I had known exploded into 1,000 pieces. I stood there, feeling the onset of dizziness, not from turbulence, but from the sheer terror of realizing I was walking into a nightmare. My gut screamed at me to act, but logic, the same logic that kept the plane on the runway in the other story, kept me frozen in place. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. But the cold, hard evidence of that name, Isabella, shattered every excuse in my mind. This wasn't about a life ending. It was about the life I knew ending, and the search for the truth was about to begin. If this story touches your heart and reminds you of a betrayal you once faced, please stick with me. This story is a testament that justice can be served, even when the betrayal is deep. Robert was a good man, or so I thought. He was the pillar of our community, a successful real estate agent, respected at church, and a doting grandfather. He was the calm in my storm, the kind of partner you build a fortress with. Now the walls of that fortress were crumbling. I decided not to confront him immediately. Unlike the brave woman on the plane who chose immediate action, I chose silence, choosing to monitor the situation, much like an air marshal observing suspects. This choice was born out of fear, the fear of losing everything, the fear of becoming the subject of gossip, and the deepest fear of all, the fear of being alone and losing my independence. Over the next few days, I became a detective in my own home. I noticed the subtle tensions, the tiny changes that had always been there but were now magnified. Robert was spending more time on his phone, always claiming to be handling a big closing. He started taking lunch meetings that lasted until 4 p.m. He was too calm, too focused, exactly like the man in the black jacket on the plane, waiting for a signal. His gaze wasn't flicking toward a cockpit door, but toward the closed doors of our study, where he kept his business life separate from our family life. The breaking point came when I intercepted a text message. It wasn't explicit, but it was enough. It was a picture of a coffee shop table, and beside the locket I recognized from the receipt was a hand. A young, manicured hand, not mine. The caption read, "See you soon, my love." The sight of that locket, a symbol of a counterfeit love, sent a cold shock through me. This was no longer a mistake. It was a premeditated act, and I was unknowingly boarding a plane set for disaster. I knew then, with the same chilling certainty as the passenger on the runway, that I had to make the most important decision of my life. Fight back. I couldn't just get off the plane. I had to dismantle the entire operation he had set up. But I wouldn't do it with anger. I would do it with strategy. I thought about my children, Sarah and David. They idolized their father. If I told them the truth now, It would destroy their faith not just in him, but in the idea of a stable family. I realized that my survival wasn't just about my own happiness. It was about protecting my family's peace and ensuring that justice was served, not just for me, but for the entire family. I contacted a close friend, a divorce lawyer named Margaret, and told her everything, starting with the hidden locket receipt. Margaret, like the kind agent Asha, confirmed my instincts. "You were never the target, Elizabeth, but now you are the key." She wasn't just talking about a legal battle. She was talking about taking back my narrative, my dignity, and my future. And the first step was to play the long game. I had to continue acting normal, smiling with a practiced serenity, all while preparing for the inevitable eruption. But what kind of secrets was Robert hiding in his real estate business that would make the betrayal even more profound? The truth would soon be revealed. I had decided to confront Robert, not with shouting, but with a calculated calm. I knew I couldn't ignore the situation. I needed to gather indisputable proof of the emotional and financial betrayal. My life, my financial freedom, and my ability to live independently in old age depended on it. I started by using my knowledge of his habits, the routine he thought was solid. Robert's great mistake was his overconfidence. He was meticulous in his work, always priding himself on being untraceable, much like the hidden device on the plane. He had a routine for everything, which ironically became my roadmap. He always left his business laptop open on his desk for exactly 10 minutes while he poured his morning coffee. For 30 years, I never touched it. Now that laptop was my cockpit, and I was the agent waiting for the signal. On Tuesday morning, with a heart hammering against my ribs, I entered his study. The atmosphere wasn't the usual pre-flight chatter. There was subtle tension, like a quiet storm brewing under clear skies. I sat down and quickly opened his bank statements. I wasn't just looking for dinner dates. I was looking for patterns, for the extraordinary expenditure that screamed betrayal. And I found it. It wasn't one large, obvious transfer, but a series of small, rapid movements. Payments to an offshore account, and oddly, monthly tuition payments to a private college in Connecticut. My mind raced. Connecticut? Neither of our children attended college there, and Isabella's hand in that photo looked young enough to be a student. The financial plot was far more complex than just an affair. It was an entanglement that threatened our entire retirement and financial freedom. Robert wasn't just cheating. He was funneling family assets to support a double life, maybe even a secret second family. The sheer scale of the deception felt like a physical shove, throwing me back just like the passenger who tried to lunge for the emergency door. Margaret, my lawyer, confirmed my fears. "Elizabeth," she said, "this isn't just infidelity. This is financial betrayal. And in our state, that makes all the difference for justice to be served." He thought he was untouchable. The thought of his smiling, placid face across the breakfast table, knowing the extent of his hidden web, filled me with a pure fear, not of my own death, but of my future being hijacked by his greed. I realized I was fighting not just for my pride, but for my self-reliance in old age. The puzzle pieces started to click into place. His nervous movements, the frequent late closings, the subtle glances at his phone. They weren't just signs of a man in love. They were the actions of someone trying to cover up a covert operation. I felt like the young teenager on the plane, now an unwilling witness, seeing the signs of exposure. I kept whispering to myself, "I can't do this, I can't do this." But Margaret's voice, like the calm guidance of Agent Asha, reminded me, "You were never the target, but now you are the key." I needed one final undeniable piece of evidence to secure my freedom. The final confrontation had to be timed perfectly. I needed Robert to be blindsided, to drop his facade entirely. I chose a quiet Sunday evening, after the children had called, and we were sitting in the living room, the atmosphere thick with the comfortable silence we had shared for 3 decades. He was reading the paper, his foot tapping rapidly, oblivious to the ticking time bomb in my lap. I cleared my throat. "Robert," I began, my voice steady, "I found this receipt." I slid the locket receipt across the coffee table. He looked down, his expression unreadable, almost bored, a mask of practiced calm. He knew he had been caught. He slowly rose from his seat, pretending to stretch. Then he finally looked up at me, his eyes cold, assessing, like a predator noticing an unexpected move from its prey. The man I loved was gone. Only the criminal remained. He didn't deny it. "It's complicated, Elizabeth. I can explain the financial situation," he said, his voice flat. But I cut him off. I didn't want an explanation. I wanted justice. "It's not complicated, Robert. It's betrayal. Is this tuition for a child, Robert? Is Isabella my stepdaughter, or is she just an expensive entanglement?" My questions hit him like a shout. His face, usually serene, went bloodless. He had waited for this moment, but he hadn't anticipated my calm preparation. He then did what all cornered people do. He lashed out. "Don't be a fool, Elizabeth. I earned this. You wouldn't survive without me. You can't take my money." That was the final trigger. His words, the fear of me, a middle-aged woman regaining her independence, was the motivation behind his greed. "I have been planning this for weeks," he confessed, his composure gone. "I moved the assets. You get the house, and that's it." That device was placed below seat 14C, and he thought he had me cornered, but I was ready. I leaned forward and whispered the words Margaret had prepared. The woman in the business suit was actually an undercover agent from another branch monitoring the suspects from a different angle. Robert froze mid-motion as the doorbell rang. "You don't understand, Robert. This isn't over. My lawyer and her financial team have been monitoring your offshore accounts for a week. You were never the target, but your dishonesty is the key to my freedom." As he stared blankly forward, realizing he had been outmaneuvered, I knew I had made the right choice to act. The plane had barely come to a full stop when everything erupted at once. But for me, the full stop was the arrival of the divorce papers served by the financial marshal, Margaret's team, and the explosion was Robert's rage. He stood there, surrounded by his own shattered illusions, his expression unreadable, almost bored. He had believed his intricate scheme of hidden finances and quiet betrayal was watertight. But my careful, patient gathering of evidence, the security hazards training of my nurse's mind, proved him wrong. Margaret's team didn't just target the infidelity, they exposed the financial fraud, the skimming of real estate commissions, the misuse of joint funds, and the illegal transfer of assets into Isabella's name. It was a calculated hit on my financial stability, designed to look like a simple divorce settlement. But because I didn't ignore the warning signs, because I chose to act on instinct rather than routine, I was not just a survivor, but a victor. The most painful part wasn't the realization of the affair, but the absolute betrayal of trust and the lie that was our enduring love. I felt the tears fall down my face, not because I expected to feel weak, traumatized, or broken, but because I realized how close I had come to never hearing my own voice of reason again. I had nearly been part of a breaking news headline, not of a plane crash, but of a woman financially ruined by her husband's greed. Robert was forced to sell a majority of his assets, not only to satisfy the settlement, but to cover the damages from the financial misconduct. The truth about Isabella and the tuition fees was secondary to the legal facts of the fraud. Justice was served. He lost his pride, his reputation, and his financial fortress. I got the house, a significant portion of his hidden liquid assets. And, most importantly, I got my future back. I expected to feel weak, traumatized, broken, but instead I felt something unexpected. Purpose. Over the next few months, I cooperated with Margaret to dismantle the larger network of Robert's dubious business practices. I stopped living passively. I started paying attention, not with fear, but with awareness. My children were initially shocked and hurt. But when they saw the evidence, the cold, hard facts of their father's long-term deceit, they understood. I hadn't destroyed their faith. Their father had. My daughter Sarah cried, "Mom, I'm so sorry you went through that. You were never supposed to be in danger." I needed them to know that I was alive not by chance, but because I chose to act on instinct. Today, I share this story because you deserve to know that sometimes your life depends on a choice you never expected to make. You may never be handed a napkin with a warning written on it, but you might feel uneasy in a situation, notice something strange, or hear a voice inside you telling you to act. Don't ignore it. Your gut is not panic, it is protection. And sometimes protection comes in the form of the quiet, patient planning you do to save your own life, your own future, and your own independence. You have the power to take back control, no matter how desperate the situation seems. I am living proof that you can find the light after the darkest betrayal. I travel now not as a nurse, but as a free woman, sharing my story on Aunt Cora's porch, proving that financial freedom and self-reliance are the sweetest revenge. If this story opened your eyes or made you feel grateful to be alive today, or reminded you of the strength you have within, make sure to subscribe right now. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? Join Aunt Cora's porch every evening for another story that'll stay with you long after it ends.